Next example is about presenting the collections of data, usually a list of lines. In case of purchase order, it will be purchase order lines with items and their information, such as quantities, discounts, amounts, and so on. In Docentric, we use the list tagging element to present the repeating content. I will continue using our CBD replica for purchase order. You can see in the sample data that there are 7 purchase order lines, which are also visible in the live preview pane. Notice this list tagging element, which is bound to the collection of purchase order lines. It is responsible for repeating this whole content for each new line from the collection of purchase order lines. How come that there are only 2 rows in live preview for each of the 7 lines? Well, it is because most of the rows in the design are conditionally printed, only if there is some content different from empty strings. You can notice a bunch of if tagging elements, and if I select them one by one, you can see that each goes around the whole table row. So obviously only this first row and one more, product inventory dimensions, are visible. These lines are by default rendered in the same order as they come from the report data source. If I open the sample data again, you will notice that the line number field has values in the ascending order from 1 to 7, and that's how we see the rendered lines as well. What if you need the lines sorted in some different order, let's say sorted by the line number but in a descending order? I will simply apply some sorting rule to this list tagging element. I got the sorting dialog, where I can provide one or more sorting criteria. I add a criteria to sort by the line number. By default, the sort order is ascending, so nothing changes from the previous state. And as soon as I pick the descending sort order, the state in the live preview pane changes. I will remove this sorting criteria, and instead of it, I will include sorting by quantity. These last 4 lines have the same quantity, so to distinguish between them, I can add an additional sorting by unit price in the descending order. And how is this done in electronic reporting? In electronic reporting, you need to make sure that the lines in the data source are already sorted in a way you need. In Excel format, this is the range that is repeated for each purchase order line. You could say that it is equivalent to the area surrounded by the list tagging element in the Docentric template. And what do we know about this named range in electronic reporting? Here is the electronic reporting format configuration, and when I select that range, you can see that it is bound to this data source, order line, line item. Okay, see how this looks in the electronic reporting model mapping configuration. On the right side is the model mapping, where I will look for order line and then line item. Here you can see that it is bound to the purchase order TMP variable from the data source. And where is that variable? On the left side are data sources, and here below is a group of data sources which are of a variable type. So let's expand this group and see what is available. You can find the purchase order variable, click Edit and Edit Formula to see how it is prepared. What can you see from this formula? These TMP records come from yet another variable called purchase order lines, only they are filtered to return only those records that have the flag purchase order trans or text trans set to true. In other words, from all the lines, take those that represent transactions, while the text lines would have this flag false. Let's investigate further and search for this purchase order lines variable. It's right here below the TMP variable. Let's check its formula. Now finally, in this formula, you see that some sorting is applied. This variable takes everything from the purchase order records, but orders them by the field purchase line number. From this investigation, you can conclude that the lines are prepared in the data source sorted by the line number. If you want them sorted in the descending order, you need to modify this formula here to return the lines ordered like that. If you don't know how to do it, you might think that here on the right side you will find some instructions. Let's try that. Search for the order by function. You can find it under the list group of functions. The description below doesn't help a lot, but learn more might help. If I search for ascending, there are a few places where it is mentioned, but there is nothing about descending. So it turns out that ascending is a default behavior, which is as expected, but how can I force the descending order? I had to Google for D365FO electronic reporting formula order by descending to see that there is a function called reverse. Usage example is like this. This means that I should add this function in front of the whole expression like this. I would now need to save this formula and electronic reporting model mapping configuration, then to execute the report to see the results. If I would want to add more sorting conditions, as I did in the Docentric template designer, I would need to keep modifying this formula. As you can see, you need to have a very specific knowledge of this expression language, and help is not always at your fingertip. As opposed to that, in the Docentric template designer, you use a simple point-and-click approach to specify one or more sorting conditions, an ascending or descending order. And you immediately see the results in the live preview. You don't need to save the artifacts and execute the report. Let's see something else related to lists or collections. Let's say that you want to separate the lines into two tables. In one table, you want to present only lines having quantity above 1000, and in a second table, the lines with lower quantity. In the Docentric designer, let's add the first table. For the simplicity, let's say we need to show only line number, item ID, and quantity. We need 3 columns and few rows. The first row you use for the labels, but I will type just static captions so that I'm faster. This second row I will intentionally color in, let's say, orange color, and I want to repeat it whenever there is a new purchase order line having quantity above 1000. So I select it, click the list tagging element, and point to the collection of purchase order lines in the binding dialog. I need to add a condition for filtering this whole collection of lines, and the simplest way to do it is to click this button, Open Script Editor. In the Docentric template designer, we filter the collections by using the square brackets like this, and within them we enter the filtering condition. I said that I will filter the lines having quantity above 1000, so I need to type the name of the field, which is quantity, and type the rest of the expression. Notice that there are 4 such lines in our sample data, so as soon as I finish this expression and come back to the main designer window, 4 orange lines will appear in the preview window, which means that we are on the right track. Now I only need to add these 3 fields I want to print, line number, item ID, and quantity, and we are done with this table. Okay, I can make it a bit nicer, set the formatting for the quantity to N0, and make these columns narrower to adjust to the content. And this is our list of purchase order lines with quantity above 1000. If you want another table with the lines having quantity below 1000, you can just select this whole table, copy and paste it here below, then just adjust the filtering condition, and if you want, you can also change the color of this second table. And how would we achieve the same result in electronic reporting design? We need a new named ranges for these 2 new groups of lines, so we would create them in Excel. But we cannot simply put these ranges to the same collection of lines, as they are prepared specifically in data source as all purchase order lines ordered by line number. We need to create new variables in data source, one for the lines having quantity over 1000 and other for the lines with lower quantities. They would need to be also ordered in a way we need them to be presented on the printout. Then we can bind these two new Excel named ranges to these two new variables, which means the data source will contain multiple sets of records. And each time when we need a different presentation of the data, we need to fix it in the data source. So there is a lot of going back and forth between the Excel format, electronic reporting configurations, and printing the report. As a conclusion, processing Docentric is extremely efficient in terms of editing the design, testing it, and using a simple point-and-click approach for many frequently used functions, which truly allows that non-developers become a primary profile who own the design.